the second video that we're doing here. As promised, I'm going to be giving you a big, big picture of my history. Eventually, we'll get into when I met Beth stuff, but the first part of that history is to talk about the small town in Colorado that I grew up in, which is Woodland Park. Like I said, now I'm in New Jersey, but back in the day in high school and even in my elementary school years, I was in this little town of Woodland Park. So really small town, 2,600 in the 80s. I mean, that's what the AI overview says. I don't remember how many were at when I was living there, but it was probably right around this. This was when I was in like in the high school, the school years of Woodland Park. See if we can get you a picture of it to give you kind of an idea. Like you can see here, this was in the 80s. So some of the things to take note, like we didn't have this actually 7-Eleven, which is a few buildings down there, that was relatively new. I even remember at the time somebody won the lottery. The guy worked at 7-Eleven. He was the clerk and he won the lottery. And so he bought a red Pontiac Fiero. If any of you remember, the Pontiac Fiero was brand new and they just released it. So it must be in the 80s sometime. But this was where you basically got your clothes at this time was the cowhand, which is basically boots and shirts and hats and that kind of country wear. The what is it? What station was that? I can't remember. It wasn't Amoco, but the gas station down here was where I got a lot of my car repairs fixed because at the time I had just really old cars. My first car was a 1967 Volkswagen. I'll have to find out. But so it was breaking down, and I would have to go there. I would always get my gas in like increments of $5. It's funny. It is even hard for me sometimes today when I go to the gas station to fill it up because I go back to those years of just having like $10 in my wallet all the time. And so I would never put more than like $5 of gas in. Now, granted, gas was only like 90 cents a gallon, but you could see this was like Woodland Park. We had our big whoop de woo was when I don't remember what year it was, but Pizza Hut came to came to Woodland Park. My mom worked in the library, and I couldn't even. I could. My dad worked in the for the natural gas company because there was a lot of natural gas there and propane. So he worked for the propane company for a while too. But the library was literally, I couldn't even find pictures of it when I was growing up. It was literally like you think of it like a one room schoolhouse, but it was a little dinky library. I don't know if you could see here, but everything was a dirt road. Like everywhere was a dirt road except for this main highway because this was funded by the feds or the state. Um, and so literally every single road except for that were was was uh, was dirt roads. Motorcycles. You would be riding motorcycles on dirt roads. You would see there would sometimes you'd actually see like horse manure in the roads because people would ride their horses around, and so they would ride their horses on the roads to get from one place to another to ride their horses essentially, or go to the rodeo. Right across the street from this section was the rodeo, where every weekend they would have a rodeo, and everyone would go there with their horses and stuff like that to compete in the rodeo. That was like one of the big sports at the time. Let's see here. Anything else interesting in Woodland Park? It's considerably different now, but we'll get into that a little bit when we look at the houses. Let's take a look at where Woodland Park is. First, I'll show you this. This was the pass that we would go up. Oh, I'm probably gonna regret doing this, but let's do it anyway. Let's go back up. Let's go to So here's the map of Woodland Park. You'll see Woodland Park right here, buried kind of in all the mountains and all the trees. And this is Colorado Springs, which I guess Colorado Springs is probably the second biggest city in Colorado now. Denver being the first. But this pass right here, this Highway 24, is what I would go up to commute to college. So I would go from here and then go all the way into Colorado Springs and come down and then go to the University of Colorado in Colorado Springs. But it's kind of funny because I went back to Woodland Park like 6 months ago to hang out with a good friend of mine. And it's funny how beautiful things are. Like I used to drive by this is I don't know what that is. This is Garden of the Gods, and essentially I would drive by this. There's a road that parallels this all the way to the university, and I would drive by this every day. And it almost looks like, now that I'm looking at it now, it's a certain time of day. I mean, this looks like something that could be out of a movie, but I would ride this every day and just drive right by it, and not even notice it. But now, now I'm like, wow, that's just gorgeous. But it's to give you kind of a feel of the mountains. I can show you where I grew up, which we'll get back to this in a minute. This is the grocery store where I basically worked to earn my way through college. Um, this is the traffic light. this this is the area of the traffic light where they just put the traffic light in, and it was my first car accident. I was probably, I don't know, maybe 17, because I think we could drive at 16. But I was 17 years old. They put the stupid traffic light up. Literally the day after they put the traffic light up, I was driving from home coming down here and just wasn't paying attention. The person in front of me stopped, and I just went right into him. I mean, I stopped at the last minute, but I still hit them, all because it was the first traffic light ever to be put up in our town. So I don't know how many of you can say that. Maybe there's more than I thought. Where you grew up in a town where there was no traffic lights, and you were you were the first one to be in to go through the traffic light. So this is my house. This is basically a double wide trailer that I grew up in. Um, well, we'll get into that in a few minutes. So anyhow, to kind of give you, the reason I went over is to give you a sense of the mountains. Hold on, let's take a look. So this is my house right down here that I spent most of my childhood in, and you can just see the mountains, all the mountains in the background. A lot of land, houses. The houses had a lot of land. Funny thing is that house remained relatively unchanged. Somebody painted and put a roof on it. Other than that, it's fundamentally a double wide trailer on bricks. You see this, you can see the aspens. We don't really have, our fall there was more of the aspen trees turning yellow, because these trees stay on, I think they're pine trees, the whole time. Oh no, they're not pine trees, because pine trees shed. I'm not sure what kind of trees these are. But this was right in front of my house. So essentially it's just land, just we were even out of Woodland Park, but like, I don't know, 5 minutes out of Woodland Park. Just another shot of, this, I swear that the skies are so beautiful. We went back there, and I couldn't believe how blue the skies were. You take all that stuff for granted. So I would commute from, that's Woodland Park. I would commute up this highway, and basically you're just going up through the mountains here. Now it's funny, it says Northwest Colorado Springs. It's just, but not a lot of development there. But you could see, like, this is like, you feel like you're in a national forest, and you're really driving this like every day. You're cutting through. Let's see what it looks like the other way. It shows more mountains. Let's see if they show a little more. But you can definitely see on this side, they're cutting out, they had to cut out all this stuff to make the pass. And so every day we would, well, not really, not every day. I would go to college probably like I tried to get my schedule so it was like 3, 4 days a week. So I would drive up and down this. It was like a 40, 45 minute commute. No glorious history with me. So that was the trip. That was the trip to Colorado Springs that I would take every single day for the most part. That's Garden of the Gods. So one of the interesting things, we'll go back to this original picture here. Well, I mean, like I said, this is a double wide trailer. My parents' room was on the very end. My room was here. My brother's room was next to my room. We had a wood stove. We used a wood stove to heat this whole thing. We'd always have wood sitting in the front yard. My job was to take the wood from the stacks. We would buy cords of wood. It's already split, and then I would stack it on this porch here, and then I would be responsible for making sure that was stacked. So when we got all the snow, it would be dry. Then my dad would grab it in the morning, like 6 o'clock in the morning or whatever, bring it in, and then stoke the wood stove to keep the whole house warm. And so it was propane. I think we had a propane tank somewhere in there, but we used primarily the wood stove, and that was my job. That's why to this day in my house I have a gas fireplace, because there's just no way I'm going through that. It was just every winter, just tons of wood, just moving back and forth. And then this was like the living room down here in the end, where there was like a chair. There was a chair here, and then like a little beanbag chair next to it that my dad and I would sit. My brother would sit next to him on this side, and we'd watch TV and hang out. So that was my house. Going back to this picture, which is what reminded me of it, is City Market is the grocery store where basically I earned my way through college, and I was like, well, we're talking about, I'm going to try and cover all this stuff, my history at Woodland Park in one shot, so you can kind of see where I came from. But I did some groundwork here. I went out to my Social Security statement, and which everyone should do. Everyone should go to the Social Security website. Forgot how much you're going to get. Hopefully, we'll get it all. And just put in and got my earnings history from there, and put in the years where I was working. So basically, when I turned 16, I actually was a short order cook at 15, where but not for long. That was probably the worst job I ever had, was a short order cook. And so at 16, I went to work for the grocery store for partial time. And I was just curious because I hadn't really thought about it much. And so if you look here, like this is from Social Security, I made $5,000. So what I did is I was just curious because you don't remember what you did. And so what I did is I took, well, if I was making $3.90 an hour, which maybe I was making that, even though minimum wage was $3.35, I think at the time. I took that number, how much I made, and divided it by $3.90. Uh, that would give me the number of weeks that I worked, right? And so out of the year, right? Because this will give me the number of hours, and then this is taking that number of hours and dividing it by 40 and give me the number of weeks. So you can see when I was 17, I worked 32 weeks a year. When I was 18, I worked about 31 weeks a year. And what's funny, which this actually surprised me, is I worked a lot more in college than I thought. I worked 36 weeks as I guess this would have been roughly a freshman, 42 weeks as a sophomore, 51 weeks. I pretty much, by the time I was hitting my sophomore and my junior and senior year, I was just working like crazy. So my typical shift, not glamorous, right? 3 days a week, I'd work 4 o'clock to 10 o'clock. So 3 weekdays, I'd work 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. For those of you who've ever worked in a grocery store, it's called facing. We would uh, pull up all the cans and stuff. And then by the time I was by the time I was in college, I was doing basically anything they wanted me to do. I could unload trucks. I was unloading a dairy truck one time, and I dumped like 300 gallons of milk down the side of the meat aisle because you had to come off the truck and then take a turn. And I took the turn too fast, and the whole pallet like tipped over and went right from the back of the store all the way to the front. And it was a lot of milk. It took us hours to clean up. And then I would work weekends 7:30 to 4:30. And I was on top of college and everything else. So it's funny because in my mind, I couldn't do this year because I could probably view details, but this is when I got my first real job, which is, obviously wasn't the full year. So what I did is I also took, well, in my junior year, I made $8,000. So what is $8,000 in today's dollars? And it was 20 grand. So maybe the next video I'm going to make is, could I have done what I did then? Could I have done it now? And how does that impact the way we look at college? Like we're in Jersey now, and it'll actually be kind of fun to take the University of Colorado Springs, which is where I went to school for my undergraduate. Well, that's all I got was my undergraduate, my bachelor's in business information systems. That's what they called it back then. And take that and say, if you dumped me with these wages into Jersey or into Colorado or into Jersey in this day and age, could we have made it? Could I do it on 20,000? Now, bear in mind, I was commuting, so I didn't have to pay room and board. My parents paid for where I lived and all my food, but I did have to pay for my car, my insurance, my clothes. Not that I bought lots of clothes, but my gas, my food. One of the greatest things. It's just so funny. All these years later, the things. I mean, we all have this stuff that you remember. I remember down from the university it was all black and white. They were getting into generics, I think, at the time, and it was called the generic hamburger stand. and you could get a hamburger for like 38 cents, I think, something like that, and fries for 35 cents or something. So it was only like 5 minutes from the college. So I would consume a lot of generic hamburgers. Now I guess today you could do 5 for $5 at Wendy's or something like that. But maybe we'll do it. Maybe what I'll do on the next video is I'll take all this stuff and see if I could have made it. Like, could I have made it? And could I have made it in Colorado? And could I have made it in Jersey? If I was making 20,000 a year. Uh, so that was just kind of fun. That was an interesting little just tidbit of information. It's kind of hard to believe that in my junior year, and it wasn't an easy degree. Like it was basically software development. Uh, but I was working basically 52 weeks a year on average, and we didn't really. And I thought, well, what do I do for vacations? Then it hit me. We didn't go on vacations. So my parents, we never really went anywhere for vacation. We went, as far as I can remember, we did two vacations. We did one in California, and my dad had to sell his camera to do that, which is another funny thing. I grew up in Colorado, the best skiing place, probably one of the best skiing places in the country. I don't know how to ski because at the time I couldn't afford to ski. And one of my friends took me once skiing. I don't even remember where we went, if it was Aspen or Vail or whatever. We drove up there. We couldn't really afford anything, so I rented skis, but we had made a big bowl of tuna salad. Doesn't that sound great? You're up in the middle of the snow, and he had a little Volkswagen Rabbit, a little green Volkswagen Rabbit. So we went at lunchtime, took off our skis, and he went back into his car and ate tuna salad for lunch, and then went skiing again. So that's my big ski adventure. Now that same friend though, who was really awesome, he loved to go up in the mountains, and so we actually got dropped off. I think it was on the way to Vail or something like that. We got dropped off on a train, and we went backpacking in the mountains for 3 days, which was a lot of fun. This is all coming from, these were our vacations, I guess. And we went to California, and then we went to Indiana once, drove from Woodland Park, and we went to Minnesota because that's where my grandma was, in Minnesota. And I don't even know how I did it. My kids won't even go 40 minutes today. Well, they will now in their 20s, but not when they were younger. We drove all the way from Woodland Park, Colorado to Duluth, Minnesota, and I think like a 1972 AMC Hornet or something like that. I have no idea how long that drive took, but I'm sure it was quite a few hours. So again, to just remind you of the history of this, I'm just giving you the background so you can see, not not like a big upbringing here. Like I said, we lived in Woodland Park. We would go to the Goodwill in Colorado Springs to pick up clothes. I would get, used, like used toys. Sometimes they didn't have the right parts, but my parents didn't know that at the time. We just didn't make a bunch of money. I mean, granted, we lived in a beautiful place. Like it's gorgeous. Look at that sky. It's just beautiful, and even when you look at Garden of the Gods, it's just amazing. But still, just didn't have a lot of money at the time. So pretty humble beginnings. We didn't do much there. What's interesting now is that nowadays, if you look at the house values of Woodland Park, they're a lot more. I went through it, and it tended to be like when I went there recently. I just went there like 4 months ago, something like that, maybe a little sooner than that. A lot of the old houses, including our house, like look at our house. Where was my picture of our house? Trip of Colorado. That house is the same. The only thing different between when I lived there and now is the paint. It's just painted differently. So it looks like there was a tendency to, I don't know if they're just building new houses, because I went into Zillow. Oops. Where are you? Zillow. I went into Zillow, and like a lot of these houses are pretty expensive now. So they're building nice houses. But what's funny, when I went there was, like, I don't know, that a lot of those old houses, I just think there's a lot of land, so they just built new. But a lot of the old houses that I knew when I was there are still there, and they still look the same. So this is just Zillow. I didn't really look at what's for sale, but you can see, not cheap now. I know we didn't pay much. It'd be interesting if I could find out how much we paid. My parents are no longer with us. Both my parents are have passed, so I'd love to be able to go ask them how much did we pay for that first house, but I don't know. So this was Woodland Park. The Let's take a look. So this was my graduating class, like 100 people, which is really funny when you look at some of the clothes we wore back in those days. But it would be interesting if any. I looked up. I was looking for a few of these people, and believe it or not, a couple of these people are still in Woodland Park. But I didn't get a chance to track them down. One person is a good friend of ours we've been looking for forever, and just can't seem to track him down. But this was our graduating class. Like, well, it looks like around 100 people or so. The funny thing is that, just to kind of wrap this video up, because I don't want to bore you too much, is is that I live in Wayne, which is right here in New Jersey. And the funny thing is, years later, so this is just in the last couple of years, Woodland Park was the only town in the United States called Woodland Park. And and then not more than 5 miles, well, probably 10 miles from me, maybe not even that, they actually renamed part of Paterson, New Jersey, and they called it Woodland Park, New Jersey. So I had actually moved halfway across the country, almost the whole way across the country, halfway across the country from Woodland Park to New Jersey, only to 30 something years later have Woodland Park come back to me. And so I actually live just a stone's throw away from Woodland Park, New Jersey now, which is considerably different than Woodland Park, uh, Woodland Park, Colorado. So and this was the university that I went to in Colorado. See, look, this it kind of gives you a little feel. Let's see. I was going to go back. Let's see if they'll show it again, where you can see. I messed it up. Where you can see the mountains. You got just a glimmer, a glimpse of the mountains. And so this is where I went to college at UCCS. And like I said, it'll be fun. We'll take all the costs and stuff for today from Colorado, UCCS, and compare it to New Jersey. And then we'll also take those costs and compare them to the cost that I paid. And interesting question, which I'm curious about, is could I go to UCCS today? Like if I took what I made then and brought it forward to now with inflation and everything, would I have enough to go to UCCS? So maybe that'll be our next thing. We'll do a little thing uh, on college expenses then and college expenses now. So there it is. We'll end on this little note. Oh, and by the way, I dated the daughter of the guy who owned the Dunkin' Donuts. And not Dunkin' Donuts, it's called the Donut Mill. It's still there, by the way. I actually went and visited it right here. This is the Donut Mill. Best donuts ever. Um, so this was the town I grew up in. Not much, nothing crazy. So very humble beginnings. Not that I'm not humble now, or not that I made it big now. But so this is step one. Next one, we'll look over colleges and we'll go from there and how it would have done in some colleges in New Jersey and how much they cost. Thanks.